There was once a guy living in our neighborhood named Jim. He got picked on a lot for being confident and a funny guy. His mouth tended to get him in a lot of trouble, and he solemnly learned his lesson. He was very confident with who he was and refused to change it. When people asked him why he let them wail on him for his blunt comedy and wisecracks, he smirked and said, Honesty is the best policy. At least they're not hiding anything from me, and neither am I from them. One of the kids he inadvertently pissed off with a crude MILF joke was rather something of a psychotic and a sadistic streak who couldn't take kindly to insults. So he rounded up the other guys who didn't like Jimmy, and they cornered him after school in the science room. Your mouth got you into this. I wanted you to remember that, Brett the ringleader told him as he looked into Jimmy's terrified eyes. They grabbed some formonic acid, stored it in the lab, and threw it into his face. They stood around watching him scream in agony as it ate through his flesh before sniggering and running out, pretending to be concerned and wanting to help him. When the paramedics arrived and they were attending to Jimmy, who was no longer able to scream, the principal asked the boys if they knew what happened. Their leader, Brett, explained that they were walking past when they saw Jimmy sulking in the lab room. By the time they got there, he had already been in that state. The other members joined in and backed Brett up with the other fake details as Jimmy tried to protest in silent agony. The principal nodded and told them he would speak to them after he had a word with Jimmy and had gotten his side of the story after he was out of the hospital. A few days passed and Jimmy was kept in the ICU with bandages on his face, the doctors salvaging what little they could save of his face. His vision still intact in one eye and his jaw was standing despite the loss of flesh. He was still unable to speak and refused to respond to anyone. He just sat there, eyes unblinking and staring at the ceiling, bloodshot and filled with animosity. When he was discharged sometime later, he would not respond to anyone with anything other than the words, liars. His social life gone, unable to smile or even crack a joke anymore, he secluded himself in his room and began planning. Sick, vindictive thoughts thought through his mind. He would get them all one by one, decimating them, slicing them, burning them. He waited patiently until the group would be vulnerable, late at night, when they said their goodbyes and went home separately. That's when he would strike. That weekend, Brett received a package in the mail. Curiously, he opened it to find a VHS tape with the words, "For You," etched crudely onto the front. He put it in and played it. It was a crudely recorded home video by an unknown cameraman who didn't speak at all for the duration of the film. It began with the camera pointing at the date on a newspaper. It was yesterday. As he zoomed out, he could see it was in a basement, a single flickering light bulb hanging above and casting an uncomfortable scene. By the time he completely zoomed out, it was apparently this was no normal video. In front of the cameraman, and on his hands and knees, was one of Brett's friends. He was naked, a dirt blindfold around his face, and a crude gag in his mouth. He was covered in blood, horrific burns, lacerated wounds. One particularly huge on the back stood out, almost looked like they were words. The cameraman with gloved hands took the gag out of the crime boy's mouth, and immediately he began to beg to go home. Please let me go, man. I did what you wanted. Oh God, Jess, Mike, Keith, you made me fucking butcher them. I just wanted to go home, man. Please, I'm sorry, guys. I'm so sorry. He kept repeating it over and over, rocking back and forth as he did so. Brett's legs began to shake, and he felt the bile raise in his stomach. He could see the burned, mangled bodies in the background. The bodies of his friends, all of them, had markings on their body in large, deep cuts. The cameraman reached out for the boy's chin and lifted up, encouraging him to stand. He did so obediently as he was slowly led to the door off-screen, whimpering. Brett can see what's been cut in friend's back now. In the words liar, the camera cuts out temporarily. When it restarts again, they're no longer inside. They're instead out in the cold snow on the outskirts of the woods, and it didn't appear to be the original man holding the camera anymore. It's Brett's friend. He's whimpering and shivering as he holds the camera into place for 30 seconds, pointing to some trees in the distance, hearing footsteps draw even nearer. Where are you, man? You said I could go, man. You said I could go. The boy screamed and cried, frightened out of his mind. The sound of crunching snow draws near from seemingly every angle. It stops. He turns around to see the mangled face of Jimmy. A horrifyingly howl blares through the speakers and the words liar appear before the tape abruptly stops. Brett feels faint and darts to look at the front door, knowing that he was coming. As he turned to run for it, he immediately hits something and falls backwards. The last thing he ever hears is liars, as acid runs down his face and begins to slowly eat away at his flesh. The last thing he ever seen is Jimmy's face contorting into a sick, twisted smile.